It was a typical morning in San Francisco when Mark Zuckerberg walked into the small but stylish Bean Code Café, a place where startups, IT professionals, and local intellectuals gathered. All the patrons quickly recognized him, but decided to keep their distance. Zuckerberg is known to be not a big fan of social attention. He approached the counter, looked at the menu, and ordered a double latte with oat milk. The barista, a young guy in a cap, nodded, punched in the order, and slowly began to prepare the coffee. However, something went wrong. "What is this, cow's milk?" Zuckerberg asked loudly, taking the first sip. His face twisted in disgust. The barista looked at him in confusion. "Excuse me, sir, maybe I got it mixed up. I'll change it now." But Mark was already seriously irritated. "Do you even know who I am? This is unacceptable. There is no room for such mistakes in my service algorithm." His voice was heard by all the visitors, and a tense silence fell in the cafe. Several people took out their phones, realizing that something interesting was about to begin. The barista tried to smooth things over, but Mark was already seething. "It's not just coffee, it's attitude. It's service, it's level. If you work like this, then what are you even doing here?" And then the cafe staff intervened in the situation. The cafe manager, Sophie, a woman with red hair and hardened experience in service, instantly intervened in the situation. She confidently approached Zuckerberg, crossing her arms over her chest. "Sir, we can redo your order or refund your money. But you shouldn't yell at the staff." Mark looked at her, as if artificial intelligence was analyzing a potential rival. "You do realize that I could buy this place and replace you with algorithms?" he said coldly. At that moment, one of the patrons, a guy in a Google sweatshirt, snorted softly with laughter. It was a fatal mistake. "What's so funny?" Mark exploded, turning to him. The guy raised his hands. "I'm just watching you burn out over a cup of coffee." Zuckerberg took a step forward, but Sophie stepped between them. "Enough. You're not behaving like a businessman, you're behaving like a spoiled child." These words clearly stung him. His gaze darkened, he was about to open his mouth to give some devastating answer, but then two police officers appeared at the door. "We have a complaint about a disturbance here." "What's going on?" The cafe froze. Everyone stared at Mark. And now the real chaos began. The police, two stocky women in dark blue uniforms, slowly approached the scene of the conflict. One of them, Officer Ramirez, folded her arms across her chest and asked, "So who is disturbing the peace here?" Sophie sighed and waved her hand in Zuckerberg's direction. This man decided that his coffee was so important that he should put on a show for the entire district. Mark pursed his lips, trying to maintain his composure. "I just wanted to get normal service." The officer raised her eyebrows. "And for that you threatened to buy the cafe and replace everyone with robots?" There was laughter in the hall. The guy in the Google sweatshirt, who had already been mocking, decided to finish the situation. His service algorithm simply broke. That was enough to make Mark explode. "This is not funny," he growled, making a sharp movement towards the guy. And then the police acted instantly. "Stop. Hands behind your back," Officer Ramirez commanded. There was a metallic clatter, handcuffs clicked on Zuckerberg's wrists. "Are you serious?" He was indignant, but he was already being led to the exit. "You have violated public order," the officer replied dryly. "You have the right to remain silent." All the visitors to the cafe took out their phones. Someone was streaming, someone had already posted photos with the hashtags #Zuckerberg arrested, #LatteGate, #RobotRevolution. Mark, realizing that the situation was getting out of control, tried to save face at the last moment. This is all an experiment. A social experiment, you understand?" But it was already too late. Cameras captured the most scandalous moment in Mark Zuckerberg's career. And somewhere on Wall Street, Meta shares began to plummet. As Mark Zuckerberg was being led to the police car, the crowd on the street had already turned into a real flash mob with smartphones. Everyone was filming, shouting meme phrases. Error 404, good behavior not found. Instead of the metaverse, Meta arrest. Zuckerberg tried to remain calm, but his tense jaw and nervous look gave the impression that he did not expect such a development of events. "I will sue you," he told Officer Ramirez, who was pushing him into the car. "Oh, we have heard this 1,000 times, Mr. Facebook," she replied with a grin. Meanwhile, a real panic began at Meta's headquarters. The press service was already preparing an official comment, the company's shares were sinking, and in the closed chats of top managers, one thought prevailed: what the hell, he got stuck again? But the worst was yet to come. A fatal Facebook post. About an hour after the arrest, Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook page was unexpectedly updated. "The system is unfair. I was the victim of a mistake. #FreeZuck." The comments literally exploded. "Finally, you felt what it was like to be banned unfairly. Dude, do you want to be unbanned? Send a selfie with your passport. Maybe you should update your privacy policy before complaining." The main blow was dealt by Twitter, or X. Elon Musk, who had long been looking for an opportunity to troll a competitor, made a single tweet. "Buying coffee is easy. Dealing with customers is harder." It became a social earthquake. Unexpected exit. While the internet was exploding with jokes, Zuckerberg was already sitting in the detention room at the police station, staring at the gray wall. The door opened, and his lawyer came in, very expensive, very angry and very ready to fight. "Do you realize that your company has lost $2 billion in the last 3 hours? Mark looked down. "I was just given the wrong milk." The lawyer took a deep breath and left, slamming the door loudly. A crowd of reporters was waiting outside, which meant that the day was far from over. Released on bail, but not out of the game. A few hours after his arrest, Mark Zuckerberg finally left the police station on bail. There was absolute irritation in his eyes, and a crowd of journalists was already waiting for him. "Mark, is it true that you broke a cup on the counter? You really got arrested for coffee? Is this a marketing ploy for Meta?" Mark didn't answer any of them, just silently got into the black Tesla Cybertruck that was waiting for him at the entrance. The driver stepped on the gas, leaving the reporters behind, but one question still caught his attention. "Is this a marketing ploy for Meta?" His gaze grew cold. "Stop the car." The driver braked sharply. Mark got out, stood right in front of the journalists, and spoke clearly, loudly, without any emotion on his face. "This day showed me that modern technologies cannot solve the main problem, service. Therefore, I am announcing the launch of a new project, Meta Café. We will create the world's first café where only AI baristas will work. No mistakes. No quarrels. Only the perfect service algorithm." The journalists froze. "Is this a joke?" "This will be the most innovative café in the world," Zuckerberg continued. "And the first branch will open where I was arrested today." He smiled, turned around and got back in the car, leaving the journalists in absolute shock. The last word for cafés. The next day, the owners of the Bean Code Café made an official statement. "We are not against competition. But if there is even one bug in his perfect algorithm, we will personally come and call it a service error." Social networks exploded. Some supported Mark, some mocked, and some simply waited for the opening of Meta Café to order the first latte error there. Only one thing remained unchanged: this scandal will be remembered for a long time. 3 months passed, and the long-awaited date for the opening of the first Meta Café arrived, in the very place where the loud scandal began. Journalists, bloggers, investors, and tech enthusiasts gathered in front of the building. The futuristic Meta Café logo glowed on the facade of the café, and orders were accepted only through an app, no cashiers, no live baristas. The first customer, a young IT guy, placed an order through a VR interface and stood in line at a robotic dispensing window. A few seconds later, he received his drink. And his face contorted. "What is this?" The guy picked up the glass. It had a "latte with almond milk" sticker on it, but there was clearly something else inside. People around him became alarmed. A few more customers started trying their drinks, and suddenly there were mass complaints. "This is not oat milk. They gave me espresso, although I ordered cappuccino. The algorithm doesn't work." Within 10 minutes, social media was already bursting with memes. Meta Café, now Facebook can ban you even for your coffee taste. Zuckerberg got his revenge on us for all those memes about him. When you want the perfect algorithm, but you get a regular bug. The same scenario again. Journalists began looking for Mark Zuckerberg, who was supposed to open the café. But he disappeared. It turned out that an hour before the opening, he secretly left the premises. There were rumors that he had already cancelled the second branch of Meta Café, and his press service was preparing an official explanation. The end of an era or just another bug? Later, a message appeared on Twitter, X, from Zuckerberg's competitor, Elon Musk. "Well, Mark, maybe first we'll teach AI to brew coffee, and then build a metaverse?" After that, Meta's shares sank even more, and the café closed a week later. That day went down in history as #LatteGate, and Zuckerberg himself avoided any comments about coffee for a long time. But Little Bean Code kept working. And it seems they never had any more problems with oat milk.